G'day everyone, we're back on True Eagle, this time talking about the upcoming game against the Western Bulldogs, a game we won last year, but is still going to be an extremely tough test against a very strong side. Well, when I say very strong, we're speaking in relative terms, they're not a premiership contender, so it's not as though we're playing what I think are probably top four sides at the moment. In my power rankings, I have fourth best side of the comp, GWS were my top side of the comp. This is a comparatively easier fixture, but still a tough game because the Bulldogs looked very good last week. So we're going to talk about that, some things about changes and a little bit of opposition watch, but also kind of want to tie off a few thoughts about the GWS game. Sometimes I make the review videos and then as time goes by, I digest the game a little bit differently and I have thoughts that I kind of wanted to put into that video. So I guess one summation of that game that I'll make is I made the point that we looked more threatening against the Giants than we did against the Power. And that is because there were a few more chains and forays forward that looked like they had a lot of promise. I don't think we had the same thing against the Power. Even though the result and the margin was worse against GWS, we went longer without a goal. I do think there were some moments where we probably looked like we were on for a little bit and then a horrible mistake would happen, either forced or unforced, and we would be horribly exposed on the turnover, and that ultimately just cost us more. So rather than making an argument as to why that game wasn't so bad or whatever, I think we've done that. It kind of just got me to thinking, like, what would we rather see from here? We'd rather see us taking on a bit more of a daring game style like we tried to against GWS and ultimately, came up short, and potentially concede a few more goals, or do we want to play a little bit more conservatively? I think for me, I'd probably rather see us try and take the game on and risk bigger losses. The two losses so far have been, fairly sizable by general AFL standards, without being anywhere near as bad as last year. And you're lying to yourself if you think that's not true. And that is because, I don't think in the two rounds so far we've had quarters where we were just like, oh, we've stopped trying. I know it's a low baseline, but that is the reality of the situation last year, that we were saying these things about, the Eagles in those 5 big losses. So one thing I'll say is like this talk in the media in particular, like this narrative of us being one of the worst teams of all time, I do think this is misguided. Now, it does depend. Like, what I think is distorting people's perception of what's happening this season, it's being distorted a little bit by how bad things got last year. And you could certainly make the argument, like, we're not so far removed from that it's completely in the past. But I think, I'll give you an example of what I'm saying, to be specific. I think Matthew Lloyd said he's watched us and he thinks we're the worst team he's ever seen or something like that. And just as an aside, nothing personal against Matthew Lloyd, but sometimes the logic of the things that guy says really makes me shake my head a little bit. Look, champion footballer, and I'm sure he understands the actual game of football. I'm just talking from a logical point of view. Some of the things he says do not make sense. I think back to a few years ago when he said that Orazio Fantasia for Ollie Wines would be a good deal. Like, that's fair to Port Adelaide. What I'm saying is, like, the first 2 weeks of this season have not been worst team of all time territory. I'm sorry, it's just not true. Was our performance against GWS meaningfully different to how Hawthorn played against Melbourne? No. So if you look at them in isolation, our performances are consistent with most wooden spoon sides, I would say. So far. But perception is being distorted by how bad we were last year. And I do realize we have to wear that. We can't change people's minds, and frankly, I don't care too much. But I do find it frustrating that there's this narrative right now about how bad we are in terms of, like, historically bad. And I think that is being distorted by what's happened in the past. And don't get me wrong, it is possible that it gets that bad again, but I am just kind of frustrated. Like, I've woken up grumpy. I'm not going to lie to you. I guess what I'm saying is I'm unwilling to cop that sort of shit until it's happened, okay? If we start playing like we did last year, this year, I will not have any excuse whatsoever. In fact, there's less excuse because the injury list isn't too bad. But let's wait until it happens, please, before we start saying shit like this Eagle side is the worst of all time. I can't remember where I read it, but I read some article. I think it might have even been, the Herald Sun or something like that. And yeah, it described Hawthorn's performance as normal for a rebuilding side and West Coast as, one of the worst of all time. I forget the specifics, but I'm just frustrated this morning. Oh man, I don't know about you guys, but I'd forgotten how many Fremantle fans there were. It's like I didn't hear from them for like 10 years. And I like Fremantle fans. I have a good relationship with Fremantle fans generally as a content creator. So it's nothing personal, but it's like they really do come out of the woodwork when we suck. But it's fine. Just to be clear, if you're a Fremantle fan, you are absolutely welcome to post here. just grumpy this morning. I didn't sleep very well. One other thing that I noticed from last week that I didn't pick up until Simo's press conference was the fact that we're the second youngest 22 in the comp, which again is not an excuse. I am bringing that up because I think that's actually really positive, because naturally we're a rebuilding side, and it's nice to have the 22 average age reflect that, because, previously we'd be getting slaughtered. You look at the age demographic and it's like, oh, we're still kind of middle of the competition. And what's happened is, like, obviously Gaff comes out of the side, nearly 300 games comes out, he gets replaced by Harry Barnett, and we switch right back down. And that's probably more reflective of reality, because the most experienced guy in the team is Gaff, I think, closely followed by Darling, and he wasn't adding much. So all I'm saying is it's nice to have numbers reflect that reality. So that's promising, and hopefully we kind of keep this young vibe. But I currently think that the amount of veterans we have versus young guys in the team is a pretty good balance. I don't think we need to go too young. I'm a little bit worried about what happens if we do. Does that mean that Darling is indispensable? No. I'm probably at the point where I think Darling's probably like one bad performance away from missing. I don't think we should drop him this week, but say he has 7 touches and 1 goal, 1 this week, doesn't really impact, and then Jack Williams has another good game in the waffle, then I think it's time that we make that change. But probably just go 1 more week for Jack. Anyway, let's talk about this round in particular. So last week, the Dogs smashed the Gold Coast Suns. Waitman kicked 6. Great. Great. I am a little bit worried about this. I'll give you the positive outlook and the negative outlook. The positive outlook, I think, is that I think we play Marvel fairly well for some reason. I don't know why, but we generally had a few good performances there last year. I can't remember how many we had games there in general. Close loss to North in round 1. Didn't play terribly. I think we had 1 horrific quarter, 3 okay ones, and we kind of just look like a normal bad side. So not a bad performance compared to the rest of them. Essendon, we lost that game by a point, and then we beat the Bulldogs. So it's almost like the results there are almost better than they've been at Optus. So that gives me a little bit of hope. I think maybe is it a smaller ground? I'm not really too sure off the top of my head why that might be the case. But regardless, that gives me a little bit of belief that this could be competitive. On the other hand, the Dogs are really going to analyse the shit out of it, like how we beat them last time. And I'm sure we haven't tactically innovated a lot. I think I saw Adam Kingsley say about West Coast this week, they really looked at how West Coast set up and beat them last year, going into the round 2 clash this year, and they said we set up pretty much the same way, and they picked us off. So yeah, again, I'm not expecting Simo to be able to reinvent the wheel with the nature of the team right now. So I'm sure the Bulldogs will put a lot of time into what went right for us last time and try and mitigate that. So the Dogs, again, I think it's going to be a tough game, but hopefully we don't do too badly. That's my analysis. Last time we met, Allen kicked 3 goals, Cripps kicked 5, Kelly was very good. In terms of some team stats, we had more disposals in that game, which is, a plus. We had more clearances as well. Doggies are a pretty strong clearance side. Bontempelli also played extremely well. I remember thinking, God, we need to stop this guy, and we didn't. Bontempelli was, he would have been a deserving 3-vote game had Jamie Cripps not played one of his career best games. Which in itself is positive. It's not so if Bontempelli had an off day that day, he played with the flu, 14 touches, and we'd won, then that would probably make me a little bit nervous. But the fact that Bontempelli was unreal last time, and we still overcame them, is something, I suppose. Opposition watch, just a couple of team things that I think are confirmed that Caulfield's going to miss. Ed Richards is a pretty good player. I think he's been concussed and is out. In terms of the performance last week, one interesting thing I noticed, they only had 2 more inside 50s than the Gold Coast Suns, but won the game by 8 goals. Their conversion rate was 72%, and that translated to 21 disposals per goal. So essentially, they were just extremely efficient with the opportunities they got. Is there some upside there? Can we hope to make them less efficient? I'm not too sure. Either way, we know that their forward line is really good. And Sam Darcy is another player that I think could give us a bit of trouble in this game. I think even though he's young and raw, hard to match up on. Super tall. I think he's super talented. We're going to need 3 tall defenders again. Barras, McGovern, and Jamison need to play. And they've obviously got Norton, Ugle-Hagan, and Sam Darcy. So those are some vulnerabilities. But let's talk about us. What are the changes from a team point of view? I think this is worthwhile doing. And when I say changes, I mean changes from the 22 that beat the Bulldogs last year. I estimate probably 7, okay? So let's be specific. Oscar Allen kicked 3 goals. He's obviously not going to be available. That's a bit of a blow. But Jake Waterman will probably be the replacement there, obviously. give up a bit of talent there, but I think Waterman's had a good start to the year. Hewitt played that game, but he will get replaced by Harley Reid. Petrevsky-Seaton no longer on the list. He gets replaced by Brockman. Rotham out for Jamison. Gaff, I presume, won't get picked this week. Jinby didn't play last time, so he'll come in. Hoff is there instead of Witherden. Barras is there probably instead of Jack Williams, obviously as a defender rather than a forward. Zane True was the sub. I'd imagine he's not the sub for us this game, but we can talk about selection. So that's probably about 7 changes. Now, what changes do we make to take on the Western Bulldogs is an interesting question. So for me personally, I think I said this in my post-GWS game, but I didn't particularly feel super comfortable with the ruck situation. So the way that Simo described it was that they wanted Barnett to ruck so that Williams could play forward because we weren't tall enough. We went Marek as the sub so that Barnett could get subbed out because he's not ready for 4 quarters. Marek goes forward, Williams into the ruck. Now, the thing that I didn't really like about that is that what happens if you have an injury? You get too tall. If we have an early injury in that game, then Marek comes in, Williams and Barnett are stuck on the field. So I'd rather not flirt with danger in that same way. And Simo literally openly said Barnett's not ready for 4 quarters. So he did fine. I like him as a long-term prospect, but let's get him back to the waffle, play a full game. Bailey Williams is just going to have to suck it up in the ruck for a little bit. Marek goes into the forward line. So that settles that. I mean, I do think we're probably going to have a tough day in terms of hit-outs. Tim English versus Bailey Williams. English had like 51 last time we played them. We're probably going to lose out in that stat. That's not really a big surprise. So Barnett comes out. Who comes in? We've established that Marek goes into the forward line. So if Barnett comes out, what we really need is a new sub. I wouldn't be against Clay Hall debuting as the sub this week. He's had 2 waffle practice matches, albeit against younger waffle sides. I think Subi played a pretty young team last week. He got some kilometres in the legs, but albeit against not waffle, like a fully fledged waffle team. That being said, Clay Hall's played a fair bit of waffle now. And if he really was close to getting round 1 selection, I think maybe there's a chance we pick him as the sub this weekend. So I'm hoping for that. But again, I don't have the insight as to whether he's fully fit. But yeah, I'm not close enough to the action. But that's one thing I'm secretly hoping for. Actually, it's not a secret. I just told you that. I really don't think it's time for Gaff. Like 29 touches against a young Subi side, it's not enough. Even if he did that against a fully fledged Subi side, I'd say it's going to take more than that. Have a couple of games in there. A couple of other guys I think could be vulnerable. I think Luke Edwards is probably not quite done enough for me. There's been a bit of talk about Chesser, but I think Luke Edwards probably hasn't made the same amount of mistakes, but at the same time, what is his role at the moment? I think he had 12 touches and 16 touches in his 2 games so far, most of them handballs, if I'm not mistaken, not a lot of tackles. So is he doing something off the ball? Is he running into the right spots to, create congestion? Is he doing smart things? I think his composure's been relatively okay without necessarily being damaging. So I do think he's vulnerable. He could be one to find his way out of the team this week. And then, of course, Chesser. Does Chesser become the sub? I mean, I'd probably rather start Hall as the sub and Chesser in the team. So those are my thoughts on the team at the moment going into this round. Obviously, the teams will come out Thursday, Sunday games, so we won't really know till Friday. But those are my general thoughts. Give Darling 1 week. He's probably 3 strikes and you're out. I have said before, I think we can mark Gaff a little bit more harshly playing in the midfield than Darling playing in the forward line. But that being said, I can't. When you watch it on TV on a blurry KO stream, I can't really tell how much running is Jack Darling doing. What are his second efforts like? It's a little bit hard to tell. Those are the things he should be assessed on right now, rather than simply possessions, goals, marks, because the ball's not coming inside 50. So wait and see. Could go either way. Hopefully he has a good weekend this week. So with that all being said, what's a pass mark for this weekend? What is a pass mark? Hard to quantify again. I think under 5 goals would be solid. I think that's it, right? It's still, I don't really know what to make of the Bulldogs. There's a lot of negativity on them, but, they looked pretty good against a Gold Coast side that is stronger than ours. So they do have the forward line prowess and clearly the forward line efficiency to make us pay. So there is a chance that we play better than we did against GWS and still lose by the same margin. So that really what we're looking for is, I'd like to see more inside 50s for sure. We had 50 last time we played them, which is well above our average, which is about 40. I think in the 2 games we played this year, it's been 44 and 40. So that's one metric I'd like to see us improve in. I'd like to see us play with that same dash and same dare, like Jermaine Jones in the side last week. I know that he made clangers. I think in the opening minute, I reckon he had 2. But what he did do was hit the ball at speed. I did say this, and I do think we look different without Jermaine Jones. He might not be a long-term, fully fledged A-grade halfback distributor, But does he make us a little bit better at the moment? Does he give us a different edge? I think the answer is yes. One other thing I noticed from last week, and I can't remember if I said this on the video, forgive me if I'm repeating myself, but the centre bounce attendances were another interesting stat. So Harley Reid played almost exclusively midfield last week, 70% centre bounces he attended. Tim Kelly's still only about the same number, so he's not playing, absolute max. Jinby went up from 20% in round 1 to 70% or 67% in round 2. So that suggests maybe in round 1 they thought coming off the head knock, give him a little bit more of an outside role. They've chucked him in the centre in round 2. So, we can probably expect Jinby and Reid to spend more time at centre bounces again. Duggan, after 85% time at centre bounces in the first round, didn't attend a single centre bounce, I don't think, in round 2. We also haven't seen Brockman there yet, and I don't know if that's a load management thing or if they're just deciding maybe that's not the right best use of his talents right now. Anyway, we're just hoping for improvement, right? And I know I'll get criticised just for saying that, but slow and steady. Hopefully we can put in a really good performance. I'm not going to live stream this one, unfortunately, guys. This one's going to be on at 3 a.m. So I'm going to get up at 6, I reckon, and watch the game. And I'll still do the usual review thing, but might not live stream this weekend. I've also got to make some videos because I'm going away soon. So for now, let me know in the comments what you think ahead of this game. Tear me apart from my tantrum at the start of this video, by all means. I look forward to it. And again, I appreciate everyone getting around this channel so far. So thanks very much, and I'll see you in the next one.